Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode, the 75th episode, actually, of the All In Show, right here on Clemson Football at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm, as always, your host, Tiger Paul Craven. My buddy Jordan Bowman will be joining us momentarily. We got a great show planned for you guys tonight. We're going to talk a little recruiting. We're going to talk a little upcoming wild card players for the Tigers. We're going to talk a little all around college football. And we got a new segment that we're going to debut tonight. Can't wait for you guys to check it out. It's going to be really good. And we'll get into all of that and more in just a couple minutes. Thank you guys so much for showing up already, getting into the chat section. If you're already in here, please go ahead and hit that like button for us. We did hit our 5,000 subscriber mark. So thank you so much for helping us get there. You guys are truly the reason that we got there. So thank you so much for that. We do appreciate every single one of you. Before we get into tonight's show, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. If you haven't hit that like button, go ahead and hit that. And also share this video. The super chat feature is available for you guys if you want to support the show in that way. And without further ado, let me bring on my co-host, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
I'm feeling good, man. It's the 75th episode. It's kind of hard to believe. I'm just kind of taking it all in. We hit, the 75th episode milestone and the 5,000 subscriber milestone all at one time. So it's really awesome. And the 100th overall of Clemson Tigers Live. So that's honestly, you couldn't time it any better. So I'm just happy to be here, and it really is just kind of puts things into perspective. How long we've been doing this at this point? We're kind of seasoned veterans. So it's just really cool, man. And we're debuting a new segment. I thought it would be perfect time to do that. So I'm really excited to do that as well. So it's going to be a really loaded show, and we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You guys stick around for that new segment. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be an energetic segment and a lot to talk about there. But yeah, you said it best, Jordan. We hit the trifecta this week. It's a good week on the Clemson Football Channel for the Voice of College Football. Our 75th All-In Show episode, coupled with our 100th live episode on the channel, and then our 5,000 subscriber mark that we've been working through since last season. And we finally hit it, and it's still, I guess, technically the off season. So shout out to each and every one of you in the comment section, each and every one of you that watched this in the rewatch. We appreciate you guys so much. We couldn't have got here without you. And the fact that we did it when it's still technically the off season is a huge deal as well. Let's give a shout out to our comment section, Jordan, before we get started tonight. And that is Droid132 is already in here. Thank you so much. Jackson Johnson, always repping the channel here and always repping the Voice of College Football as well. We thank him for being one of our moderators. Jay's in here. John Diamato is in here. Thank you so much for being in here as well. Let's see. The Gamecock Grind with Rooster. Our buddy Rooster over there doing his thing on his channel and bringing you guys tons of information on the Gamecock channel. We've had him on this channel before, I believe.
Yes, we have.
And so that was a fun time. He's a great guy. You guys should go check out what he's got going on over there. Thank you, man. We really do appreciate you stopping by and being a supporter of our channel as well. And I think that does it for everybody that's in the comment section so far.
Yeah, man. And as always, we at the end of the show, we go to the comment section. We take your questions, concerns, just commentary. So if you have anything you want us to address, leave it now. We'll star them and get to them. But if you want to make sure they're read, since we can't obviously read every single comment, the super chat feature is available, and those are first come, first serve. So yeah. I'm feeling good, man. I'm ready to get on into it.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into tonight's show, everybody. And we are going to kick this show off tonight with none other than a recruiting update for you guys. So we're going to give you a little recruiting update on what is going on with this current 2025 class. Who's going to make a decision soon? Who's close to making decisions? We're just going to kind of run through the big list of the names that everybody's talking about for the Tigers. And I'm going to go ahead and lead it off, Jordan, with 4-star Bryce Davis, defensive end, 6'3", 250 pounds. He has a commitment date set for July 20th. So he's kind of in the home stretch of his recruitment. He's down to, I think, Clemson, Duke, Georgia, and South Carolina are his final 4 that he put out. And he's going to be making a decision on the 20th, on or before the 20th, probably the 20th. He talked to a couple reporters and said that's when his family can all kind of get together and support him when he makes his decision. I read a couple articles and was reading some things about him, how his parents are kind of leaning Duke because they like the academics. His mother is an educator, so academics are really important to her. So obviously Duke is probably ahead in that department than any of the schools I just mentioned. He also grew up a Duke fan, excuse me. So what are your thoughts on Bryce Davis, this upcoming commitment? This could be really big for the Tigers. This could be, one of those huge pieces. This is the number 3 ranked recruit in the state of North Carolina. So this is a huge recruitment. What do you think the Tigers' chances are? And who do you think the Tigers' biggest competition in this recruitment is as we stand today?
Yeah, man. This is a recruitment that's kind of been a long-standing one. They've been building this relationship for a really, really long time. You kind of hit on it a little bit about Duke. Definitely the ties from his parents. They definitely like what Duke is all about from an academic standpoint. But it is. They did make it clear, and he did make it clear that it was his decision. So when it comes to who is the biggest threat for the Tigers right now, I think it's obviously Georgia. He did take a visit to South Carolina. Enjoyed it, but I do think that it's a battle between Georgia and Clemson, mainly. Kind of a trend there, as we've seen throughout this recruiting cycle. And this would be a massive addition and kind of put a bow on Clemson's defensive line class. Now, there's a lot of things that are kind of pulling Bryce in multiple different directions. He has a lot of love for Clemson. There are a lot of things pulling him towards Clemson. But there are some factors that, from an outside perspective that are going to make this a more difficult decision. And this is a big recruitment for the Tigers in general because, Grimsley High School, if you guys are familiar and have been following Clemson for a long time, that has been a sort of mixed bag as far as recruiting success. And as of late, it's been a really, really difficult school to land commitments out of. So this would be nice to kind of rebuild those relationships and with that high school and kind of get that foothold really back in that Greensboro area in general. This is a really massive, recruitment, and obviously it'll put a bow. If you are able to land him, it'll put a bow on Clemson's defensive line class. But I do think Clemson has a real shot here. Georgia is always the pull from Georgia is always going to be difficult. As they've won 2 of the last 3 national championships. They're winning and being, they're arguably the best program in college football right now. So it really just isn't, ever going to be easy to pull a kid, especially from a defensive line standpoint, away from the Bulldogs. But I do think Clemson has a real shot here. We'll kind of see where it goes. I think it's still kind of up in the air. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Think Clemson's got a really good shot there. We'll see if they end up landing them, like you said. But let's go ahead and move on to a couple other recruits, and we're going to talk about a trio of wide receivers that Clemson is currently recruiting. First and foremost, we'll talk about Cortez Mills. He's obviously gone through his official visits We know Oklahoma made a big push. He most recently visited LSU. Clemson is also in the mix. Obviously, he was on hand for the big recruiting weekend that Clemson did this summer. So that's one of the key pieces that Clemson is still after to kind of wrap up this wide receiver room and kind of continue that momentum that we created last cycle when we brought in TJ Moore and Brian Wesco. So Cortez Mills is a big one still out there waiting on his decision. Samari Reed visited Penn State, Kentucky, West Virginia, Ole Miss, and then a newer addition to the recruits for, at least as far as the wide receiver, new addition this week is Dylan Alfred, Ole Miss decommitment. He decommitted back on Monday, like an hour later announced his Clemson offer. So he obviously was on hand for Clemson's spring game. He visited Clemson in the spring. He came back to work out at camp back in June, early June, and go ahead and decommits from Ole Miss. Clemson offers him. There's a crystal ball out there for him for coming to Clemson. So what is your feel right now, Jordan, on this kind of trio of wide receivers? Where does Clemson stand with each of them and their chances of landing one, two, or none of them? What do you think?
Yeah, so Clemson, ideally, they want to land 2 out of these 3 if they can. I think that would be the ideal scenario. And at this point, I believe they're communicating to all 3 of them that, hey, it's first come, first serve as far as spots. Right. I'll start with Cortez Mills. He was at the big official visit weekend on May 31st through early June, and absolutely loved Clemson. It's been a sentimental, program for him for a very, very long time. That visit kind of did everything to reinforce that. And he went as far as to say that Clemson was his leader coming out of that official visit weekend. He took visits to Oklahoma and LSU and Florida as well. And I think that Clemson still is at the very top. But I do think that the visits to Oklahoma and LSU have kind of muddied the waters a little bit. So it's kind of unclear right now, and I don't think anybody really knows where he's leaning at this point. He's set to make his decision on July 1st, so it's going to be a really, really interesting old school recruitment. Back in the day, like you didn't have crystal balls and all that back in when a big time recruit was about to announce, it was kind of, if you weren't an insider or a writer, you didn't really have an idea. So this is going to be an old school type of announcement, I think, as far as the suspense. So we'll kind of see what happens there. He mentioned Samari Reed. He's a guy that has kind of been flying under the radar as from a recruiting standpoint. He's taking visits to Clemson, Penn State. Has been heavily involved as well. I think Clemson is in a good spot, but I do think that Penn State is also a factor, and it really is going to come down to who decides to jump into the boat first. And then I do think that, and then you also mentioned Dylan Alfred, who just recently got an offer after decommitting from Ole Miss. I feel the most. I feel like I have the feel on that one the most. You can kind of connect the dots. He decommits from Ole Miss, gets immediately after his camp visit. You can kind of read between the lines. Clemson was not going to offer if he was still committed to Ole Miss, and if they felt good about where the direction of that recruitment was headed, and he's taking all the steps to potentially land, end up in this class. So I do like where Clemson sits a lot with Dylan Alfred. Really like his tape. And I think all 3 of these guys, Clemson has a realistic shot of getting. It just kind of depends on who ends up, jumping in the boat. And if you can get 2 out of 3 of them, I think that would be ideal. But obviously, especially with Cortez Mills and Samari Reed, there still is some kind of uncertainty as far as where Clemson sits as far like they're definitely at the top, but are they number one? That's kind of the question at this point.
Yeah, they've made the final list for all of those guys, but again, you never know. Recruitment's a very fluid thing. It's a fickle thing. Things can change in a literal instant, especially in today's world of college football, where you have NIL and so many influences out there. Everything's at the click of a button with Twitter and social media and all that stuff. All that stuff plays into factors in of these kids' decisions. So feel pretty good, like you, about where we're at with these three guys. Fingers crossed we can land two of the three, and if we do that, we're in good shape. This class is kind of buttoned up, and Tyler Grisham would have done a really good job if you land two of these three guys in back-to-back classes as far as the wide receiver position goes. So that'll be really good. We'll wait and see what happens there. Continuing along the line of a couple other commits that we're keeping our eye on and some decisions coming up. Kamar Archie, linebacker. Obviously, we talked about him a lot on last week's episode. He's obviously between kind of a Clemson, Michigan, Rutgers type deal. He's obviously from the north. He's more comfortable up there. Obviously, we kind of spelled out all the reasons that he likes Rutgers and the hometown feel and all that kind of stuff. But we're also battling Michigan for that guy. And then Logan Anderson, another linebacker that we recently offered. So what are your feel on these two linebackers? Is Clemson in the back seat looking, in the background looking in on the Kamar Archie recruiting, or what's your kind of take on that? Is he a Rutgers lean? Is he a Michigan lean? What's your kind of feel on that? And then thoughts on Logan Anderson.
Yeah, with Kamar Archie, it is another one of those kind of where does Clemson sit right now? I think they're very squarely, in there, and I would not be surprised if they landed his commitment. But like you said, there is a lot of factors pulling him both to Michigan and Rutgers, and so there is kind of it's still kind of working itself out. So we'll kind of see how. All of this shakes out as he gets closer and closer to making a decision, but it is still kind of up in the air right now. With Logan Anderson, yeah, I couldn't feel any more the opposite. I really like where Clemson sits right now. They have made the push, the biggest push among his suitors. He's been collecting a ton of big time offers at camps recently, kind of been blowing up in this offseason. I really would not be surprised, and honestly, I would be surprised if he didn't end up in this class. I really like where Clemson sits right now.
All right, and then we'll finish up with just some offensive line talk. It's not looking good with these guys, but Hardy Watts, David Sanders Jr., thoughts on those guys, thoughts on what's going on with the offensive linemen in the 2025 class. What do you think?
Yeah, certainly not ideal when you talk about both of these guys. Hardy Watts, set to make his decision same day as Cortez Mills, July 1st. So that's going to be that could be either a really, really good day for the Tigers or a really disappointing one, or maybe somewhat in between or a mixed bag. So it'll kind of a mix, a wide range of emotions we could have coming out of Monday. But yeah, I do think that Michigan is the perceived favorite right now. I can't really say otherwise, but there still seems to be constant communication, and it's not a done deal even as we get closer and closer to his decision. So I'm not saying he's a Michigan lock, but I do think Michigan should be the perceived favorite heading into his announcement. And David Sanders Jr., as I continue to say, it is very much you're battling kind of the money of Tennessee and Ohio State. And I really think those two have, pulled him in that direction a lot more. I don't think Clemson is totally out of it, but it is a very, I would call it an outside shot at this point. So, that is what it is. He was your number one guy, so it's never fun to lose these types of these type of commitments. But again, it's not over. But as we get closer and closer to his decision, and as you know, we get further and further away from that official visit weekend in early June. It does look a little bit bleak. So we'll kind of see how that shakes out.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's certainly an uphill battle for both of those individuals in Hardy Watts and David Sanders. Could we possibly land one of the two? I think we could possibly.
Yeah.
But again, uphill battle for both of those guys. Wouldn't be surprised to see us lose out on both of them. To be completely honest, it's probably looking more probable that happens than even we land one of them. So take that what you will. Again, it's recruiting. Anything could change. Who knows what these kids are truly thinking? You see all type of reports, and they say one thing to one reporter and another thing to another reporter. So it's really hard to tell. But I don't know. I don't think we're in good shape with either of those guys, like you were stating, Jordan. But again, we're still in really good shape overall for the class. We got right now, as of today, we have the 7th ranked class in the nation. We got 13 commits so far. So the Tigers have been doing work on the recruiting trail. Everything is trending in the right direction. We just got to stay the course and push the last part of this recruiting cycle to really wrap up this 2025 class in a big way. And, like we just outlined, there's a lot of big time commitments coming up in the next couple weeks. So keep your eyes peeled on Twitter and all the Clemson sites you follow, because news will be coming out. And it'll either be really, really good news for the Tigers, or might be some tough days and some expanding of recruiting boards to come. But we'll see how it goes.
And I do want to point out, because it sounds like we're being all like, oh boy, here we go. But at the end of the day, this is a thing that every program has to go through at some point. You have to, sometimes you don't get all the guys that you had at the top. That's just the reality of recruiting. And Clemson, when they have pivoted and expanded their board, they've done a pretty good job at it. I mean, you guys, hell, I mean, remember when Ray Joseph decommitted a couple cycles ago, and everybody was like, oh man, there goes our receivers. What's happening? And all of a sudden Clemson pivots to this undersized 3-star wide receiver out of Greenville High School named Tyler Brown. And I mean, if
some
you want
people weren't big fans of him when we brought him on.
Right. So. I mean, and nobody really took it seriously when it happened, but he comes in as a summer enrollee and gave Clemson a big boost in the wide receiver room when they needed it. And he was one of your best receivers last season. And hey, and not to make it a comparison or bash another kid, but the kid that you lost, he had 5 catches this year for Miami. So I mean, I do think it is kind of a perspective thing that sometimes the guys sometimes the guys that you get end up being what's best for you. It's kind of cliche, but it is about the ones you get, not about the ones you don't. So we'll continue to keep track of that and see how, especially with this offensive line board, how it shakes out after these 2 targets come off the board, whether it's in Clemson's favor or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's going to be fun to watch. Again, recruiting is always one of those things that is a very frustrating thing to watch, because you're so high in one moment and then so low in the next moment, just because of the swings in momentum that happen in recruiting in very quick turnaround time. So we'll keep an eye on that. Again, keep your eyes out on Twitter. Keep your eyes out on all the Clemson recruiting sites. There will be big news to come, whether that be in favor of our Tigers or in favor of another university. We will get answers in the next couple weeks on a lot of these bigger name prospects that Clemson is in the mix for. So keep our eyes peeled for that. if you're just joining us, we got 27 people in the live chat right now. Go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. This is the 75th edition of the All In Show. So thank you guys for joining us. Just hit 5,000 subscribers. This is the 100th live episode on the Clemson football channel under the Voice of College Football umbrella. So thank you guys for joining us on this special occasion. We appreciate each and every one of you. As you guys know, at the end of the show, we will turn the show over to you guys. We will turn it over to the comment section. We will allow you guys to ask us anything you want and drive the show from there. So stay tuned for that. That's always a lot of fun at the end. And also share this video. That would be greatly appreciated. All right, Jordan, let's go ahead and get into the next segment that we're going to do tonight. And we're going to talk a little 2024 wild cards for the Tigers. So what we're going to do right here, guys, is we're going to go position by position, and we're going to kind of give some wild cards, if you will. Some may be more obvious than others, but some wild cards nonetheless of guys that could maybe have a breakthrough for the Clemson Tigers that may not be expected in the 2024 season, okay? So, again, we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. Jordan, we're going to start with quarterback. Obviously, there's no secret here. Everybody knows who Clemson's starting quarterback is. Some people have more criticisms of him than others. That is none other than Cade Klubnik, former five-star quarterback out of the state of Texas, has had his growing pains as the Clemson signal caller. But, again, we'll see how he performs this year. So, again, do you have any wild cards for the quarterback position? Should Cade Klubnik not be able to finish the season? Knock on wood. Hopefully no injuries happen. But who would be your wild card for the QB position, Jordan?
Yeah, well, it honestly it's kind of cheating, but honestly, like the true wild card of the quarterback position is Cade Klubnik. But if I can't choose him,
right, we can't choose the starter.
I think it's very obvious who the next guy is, and that would be none other than Trent Pierman. Now, I do think that Chris Vezina is a wild card in his own right, because there is a world where he takes that next step and he looks like he's ready to eventually become a starter. But I do think Trent Pierman is the wild card here, because if Cade, God forbid, does not perform up to what Clemson needs him to be, and they have to make a quarterback change, I do think Trent Pierman would be that next guy. Especially as of right now, he's not the most physically gifted, doesn't have the strongest arm, but he very, very smart, understands the offense, knows what he's looking at. Like when you watch him play, it looks like he knows where to go before the ball is even snapped. So that is a valuable piece to have, and would be able to steady the ship. Even I'm talking about if Cade doesn't perform, but also what if Cade gets injured? So either way, you have to have that guy. So I do think it would be Trent Pierman, and Chris Vezina in his own right is kind of really the whole quarterback room is a wild card. It's kind of funny because
it truly is.
There really is a wide variance of outcomes as for all three of these guys. Maybe Chris, all of a sudden, he looks like he's ready to be that guy, and he's really QB2, or maybe Cade could, all the pieces could come together, and the light bulb comes on, and all of a sudden he's the 5-star that we thought we were getting. Or Trent Pierman comes in and kind of gets this offense going, and this Garrett Riley offense looks more like what we had hoped it would be. So it kind of is the whole room in a sense is a wild card. But I'll go with Trent Pierman because I think that he's the next in line and he's the guy that has to step up if things don't go right, whether it's injury or lack of performance.
Yeah, look, I think you put it best, Jordan. This entire room is nothing but a wild card, and that's the long and short of it, really. Is Cade Klubnik going to look like the Cade Klubnik from last season, where he made a lot of poor decisions and held on to the ball too much, and didn't read the field particularly well? Or is he going to be the Cade Klubnik that we thought we were getting out of Westlake in Texas, where he was an absolute baller and dropping dimes and playing big in the biggest moments of his high school career, right? But I think you're right. I think Pierman's the definite play here, just from the perspective of what we saw in the spring game. I know there was a lot of Clemson fans screaming after that spring game, why isn't Pierman the starting quarterback for the Tigers? Because, frankly, he did look pretty good, right? He looked like he knew where he wanted to go with the ball at all times. He looked comfortable in the pocket. He presented himself as a playmaker, a guy that can operate outside the pocket, a guy that can really hurt a defense when things break down. So I think for those reasons, Pierman's the obvious choice here. Like I said, some of these are going to be obvious and some of these are going to be less obvious with the picks that we go. But again, I agree with you, Jordan. The quarterback room is entirely a wild card. What are we going to get this season? I don't really think anybody knows. We hope we get the Cade Klubnik, the 5-star Cade Klubnik that we recruited out of Westlake. But again, we don't know. So entire wild card there. Let's move on to the running back position. There's a lot of names to choose from here, Jordan. And I know across college football, if you're not a Clemson fan and you're not digging into our depth chart really well, you may not know some of these guys, but there is a lot of depth and a lot of good depth, I think. I think CJ Spiller has done a phenomenal job of stacking talent in this running back room. We did have a transfer this past offseason, but again, there's still a ton of depth in this room. We do lose Will Shipley. Again, I'm not going to pick Phil Maffa. Obviously, everybody knows what we have in Phil Maffa, but I would go with my wild card. I would say Easy E, David Ajamume, would be my wild card. Freshman coming in. Everybody knows the speed that he has. I just think that gives him a unique ability to kind of offset what a running back like Phil Maffa does. So that's a wild card to me, a younger guy that may kind of break through and get a little bit more playing time than people may think he gets. So,
yeah, man. Wow, I'm kind of surprised. I thought we were going to be in agreement, but we're actually reaching the first time we picked two different guys. I think I had to go with Jay Haynes for me. I think, yeah, from what he's presented in the limited action he's gotten, I do think that he provides the most dynamic ability outside of Phil Maffa in the running back room. And I think, Phil Maffa is your guy. He probably should have had 1,000 yards last year. I think I feel pretty confident he'll eclipse that this year. Jay Haynes is a guy that was kind of flew under the radar as a recruit, went to his high school was like 2A in the state of Alabama, but man, is he a legit athlete. And I do think he presents a lot of mismatch opportunities, especially if he can develop as a pass catcher. But I do think he has a big playability, shiftiness. I really did like his tape coming out, and the limited action he did look like he had some kind of some burst to him. So I'm going to go with Jay Haynes. I think he's the guy that will factor in the most outside of Phil Maffa as far as running backs is concerned, even more than say a Keith Adams Jr. So I think it's Jay Haynes for me. He's kind of the what are we going to get out of him this year? I'm confident in him. I'm really excited about his future, but what do we get out of him going into his second season?
Yeah, I think a healthy Jay Haynes is obviously he's the one that probably crossed my mind the most. You guys know out there, me and Jordan have talked up Jay Haynes a ton going into the spring practice of this year, and he just didn't stay healthy for spring. So that's just one of the drawbacks that I have for Jay Haynes. Not saying that this dude is not dynamic. When healthy, he could bring an explosiveness to this offense that we haven't seen from a running back in quite some time, I think, just because of his speed and athleticism and his ability to just make plays when the ball's in his hand, especially when he's in space, right? I just worry about his ability to stay healthy. But if he can stay healthy, I think you're right, Jordan. Jay Haynes would definitely be a solid pick for a wild card for this offense and could really make a huge name for himself. There could be a lot of people that know Jay Haynes by the end of the season that have no idea who he is right now. So, like your pick there. Let's go ahead and move on to the wide receiver position. This is a position, Jordan, that we have talked about at length on this channel. One, because of a lot of the national narrative that's out there that, well, Clemson doesn't have any wide receivers. They got no wide receivers that are any good. The only good wide receivers they have, they just brought in the freshman class, and that's TJ Moore and Brian Wesco. That's the short synopsis of what you would hear out of most of the coverage of the Clemson Tigers, right? Now, if you're more nuanced and you pay attention to teams and you pay attention to the rosters and you pay attention to the recruiting that Clemson has done, you know that that's simply not true. You know that Clemson has quite a deep class of wide receivers. They got quite a deep wide receiver room. And although it has been plagued with injury for the past few seasons, there's a lot to be excited about when you look at this wide receiver room just at surface level, the various body types that we have, the various skill levels that we have. You talk about Adam Randall, Antonio Williams, Troy Stellato. I mean, the list goes on and on, okay? So who is your wild card to possibly break out and finally let the country know that we do have good wide receivers at Clemson? We just haven't necessarily put together a competent offense on the field in a couple seasons.
Yeah, there's like a litany of guys you could go with.
Yeah, you could go so many ways here.
And I think it's because of what you mentioned. I mean, this wide receiver room, for the first time in a while, that there's a very good diversity of body types and skill sets. And so, you know, there are multiple guys that can fit multiple roles, and it just kind of depends on how that depth chart, you know, kind of shakes out in terms of how much they play. So when I was thinking about like a high variance of outcomes, I'm going to go with Adam Randall, because I think there's a world where he doesn't really put it together, and you know he's expected to be that boundary receiver, and you bring in two 5-star receivers who can absolutely play on the boundary. If he isn't giving you the explosiveness and big play ability that those two can, then you know maybe he fades kind of into the background. But then on the other hand, Adam Randall is the most physically gifted wide receiver in the entire room. The dude is built like he's built like AJ Brown. Like it's like, and his rare combination of size and speed. It's. I mean, you really can't coach that. So I think for him, and we kind of talked about it last week. It really is about him just, you know, kind of fully, you know, putting his all 100% into every single rep and kind of getting over that mental block that I think he had at times last year after, you know, coming off of injury. So I think I had to go with Adam Randall, but there's like I said, there's a couple guys that I would have thrown in the mix as well. But who are you going to say?
So I went back and forth on this a little bit because, again, like you said, that you can go so many ways with this wide receiver room, and there's so much good potential in here that could literally have, like, I could pick like 4 of these dudes, 5 of these dudes that could have breakout seasons, right? That have the potential, right, to have breakout seasons. But I'm going to go with a guy that spent all of last season injured, a guy that had a breakout season a year prior, and that's Antonio Williams. I think a lot of people have forgot how good Antonio Williams is and how explosive he was in this offense. Remember, the year before Tyler Brown, he was Tyler Brown, right? He was that breakout freshman wide receiver that really was kind of it for Clemson's offense, right? One of the only big key tools that we had in that offense that season, right? And then he just kind of lost his momentum last year. He spent all of last season really hurt. He comes back for the bowl game, but he's not really healthy. You could visibly see that he wasn't Antonio Williams on the field. Now, all reports during spring practice were that he looked all the way back to where they always knew Antonio Williams was. So I just think a guy like that is going to come into the 2024 season very hungry to prove himself, right? We see this a lot with players when they get taken away from the game for an extended period of time, whether it be injury or what have you. They gain a new appreciation for how important football is to them and how much they missed it and how much they want to be out on that field. And for those reasons, I think Antonio Williams can be a key explosive guy in this offense and really be a problem for defenses, not only because of what he can do on the field, but I think he's going to be super motivated to come back this season and really put it together on the field after being removed due to injury all last season.
I think that's a great pick, man. He is, and like I said, people, and like you said, people have kind of forgotten how good he was as a freshman, and just because of the injury concern. I mean, and that's kind of been a trend for a few of the guys in this room. It's like there are a lot of, like, we've seen them at their best, and we know what we have, but then it's been, well, they haven't been able to put together more than one season in a row of that, whether it was injury. I mean, mostly because of injury.
Yeah.
So it really is the kind of, this is kind of the year where everything, you hope, it coalesces and you have a healthy, versatile, explosive wide receiver room, because I think the tools are all in the toolbox. So I think Antonio Williams is a great pick. Some other guys, we talked about Cole Turner last week. I think he's a huge wild card as far as how he fits into this offense. Fastest guy on the team. We saw what big playability he offered at the end of 2022.
Yeah.
And obviously he spent a lot of last season hurt. Yeah, I know it's pretty common trend. Common theme. So I really do like where this room is, and people in the comment section have mentioned Troy Stellato. Ronan Hannafin is a guy we haven't talked about a ton that the staff still is really, really high on. We'll see kind of how he factors in as we get through fall camp, because he could work his way into the rotation a little bit going into his second year. Of course, you still have Noble Johnson in the room as well. He's still kind of recovering from the offseason incident, but he still has a lot of time to grow as well. So yeah, I mean, and then and that's not even, we passingly mentioned Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore coming in as true freshmen. Yeah. So it's exciting. And Tink Kelly as well, who I think is going to be
he crossed my mind.
He's going to be kind of a interesting cog in that whole machine. I think he'll be a big factor in special teams. We'll see what how they get him involved in the offense as well. But man, it really is a good room. I think just from
it's funny because like the wide receiver room, much like the quarterback room, is a complete wild card, but for completely different reasons, right?
Yeah.
It's a wild card because we're not sure how healthy this room's going to be, but there's also so many guys that could really realistically have breakout seasons that like the entire room's pretty much a wild card. I mean, you can honorable mention almost all of them. Troy Stellato. Yeah, I mean, you could go down the line of honorable mentions of guys that you could peg as a wild card for the season. Like it's absolutely insane. I'm excited to see what this wide receiver room's able to put together in 2024, because I think it could be special if we get the right play from the quarterback position, and we get a little bit better luck than we have in seasons past as far as injuries go. I think it could be a special group of guys, and I'm excited to see who carves out the roles, because we list all these guys, but all these guys can't play. You know what I'm saying? So
at least not a ton, like where they're putting up. We have 1,000 yards, or a guy go have 1,000 yards or something. Yeah, it's just we don't. There's only so many snaps to go around, so it's going to be.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But let's go ahead and keep moving on. Let's go to the offensive line position, and I think we could go. We're not going to go position by position here, obviously. We're just going to kind of grab an offensive lineman and tell you why we think that they are the wild card. And for me, I think I will go with Harris Sewell. I think Harris Sewell's got a really big opportunity this season. He's going to be battling Ryan Lithicum, obviously, for that center position. Ryan Lithicum's been around the program a lot longer, but Harris Sewell did a lot of good last season. He got thrust into kind of starter snaps last season when Walker Parks went out with injury, right?
Yep.
And he had to play a much bigger role than even the coaching staff probably thought he was going to play in 2023. But I think he performed adequately. Obviously, he had some freshman moments and he struggled at times. And, at times he looked a little overwhelmed out there. But I think it was key for his growing and development, right? So I think that 2023 season, albeit not great at times for Harris Sewell, I think are going to pay dividends for him in the 2024 season. And I think having a young guy, a sophomore, that would be super unlikely to have a starter at center that's an underclassman for Clemson. They tend to not do that sort of thing. But I think before season's end, you're going to see Harris Sewell as the starting center for the Clemson Tigers. And I'm excited to see what he produces this season because I think it could be special.
Yeah, I think that is a really good pick. And I was debating. This one was probably the hardest to go through because I do think there are a lot of. I mean, it's kind of weird because this offensive line has 4 or 5. They're 5 starters coming back, but
Right.
there is still some question, and obviously center is the biggest point in that. But what do you get out of left tackle? That's I think that's another question. It was kind of a who's ready to go that week type of thing last season.
Yeah.
Between Tristan Lay and Colin Sadler. So I'm going to go with Tristan Lay because I do think this is kind of a make or break year for him, where he kind of has to put it together. And he was highly recruited, former 5-star out of the state of Virginia. Like, the guy has shown flashes, and you kind of see it. I thought last year was far from perfect, but I thought you saw at times the ability. So he really needs to put it all together. And so I think, he was a developmental, not all 5 stars are created equal. He came in, he was not ready to play. He was not playable as a true freshman. And he really had to get his body right and his mindset right before the coaching staff felt comfortable putting him out there. But now I think you would hope after last season, he's kind of gotten over that hump and gotten into a point where he can be that left tackle and you have that consistency up front. Because if not, you got to go with somebody else, whether it's, Colin Sadler seems like the obvious kind of the next in line. But, I think you have to get that solid, and consistent and trustworthy play out of your left tackle position, because that's arguably the most important position on the offensive line when you have a right-handed quarterback. So it's got to be better this year. And so I'm going to go with Tristan Lay because I think this is it's kind of either he kind of figures things out or he kind of fades into the background, and the younger guys kind of pass him up. So I kind of went with him.
Yeah, let's hope it's the former for him and not the latter.
Yeah.
Really be excited.
I really do. Like, I still have a lot of, hope for him, and I do think I err on the side that he does figure it out.
Yeah,
but I don't think everybody is on that page. But I still feel that Tristan Lay can be a potential NFL tackle, and we see that this year.
Yeah, I think he's going to figure it out. I'm with you on that. All right, let's move right along. Let's go ahead and wrap up the offensive side of the ball. Then we're going to transition quickly to the defense. So obviously the only position group we have left is the tight end position group. Jordan, who's your wild card for tight end?
Yeah, another group, kind of like the wide receiver room, that I think is just really, really deep, and a lot of guys that I think can play and can get involved. I'm going to go with Olsen Pat Henry here. I think what you're going to what you have in Jake Brenningstool, and I think Josh Sapp is poised to take that next step as well. But I'm going to go with Olsen Pat Henry because I do think he offers a lot from a Sapp as well, but he offers a lot from an athleticism standpoint. He's like having another receiver out there.
Yes.
So I think him kind of coming into his own as a pass catcher, I do think makes him a really, really intriguing player coming into this year. And so this is a very talented tight end room. Or this is probably the most talented it's been, at least since I've been alive, I would say. I mean, you could probably go back to 2010, 2011 when you had Dwayne Allen and Brandon Ford, and you can go back to Lil Leggett, but you never really had a stable, like a stacked, lineup of really capable tight ends, and I think Clemson has that. And that's not even mentioning, borderline 5-star tight end Christian Bentaker coming in as a true freshman, who I think is going to be one of the best to come through Clemson when it's all said and done. He moved in a couple with some of the last group of summer enrollees this past week. That man does not look like he like he was just in high school a couple months ago. That is a grown man. Him and Heaven Brown Schuler. I'm like, I put out a tweet this week. I was like, check their birth certificates, man. They're not. These are not like 17, 18-year-olds.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Heaven Brown Schuler was at prom like a few months ago, and I was like, that man is 29. He's got he's got 2 kids. Like what? But but on that note, a little aside, like I do really like this tight end room, and but Olsen Pat Henry is my pick. I'm really excited for him as a recruit.
I think I agree with you there. I think Olsen Pat Henry definitely has displayed the big playability, right? He's displayed the ability to be that matchup nightmare for defenses. He's super athletic. Like you say, he's like having another wide receiver on the field, and that's just not a good thing for opposing defenses, right? So I think Olsen Pat Henry is the obvious pick there. I think he's going to have a good season for us, I think. So would like to see what he kind of puts together in the 2024 season. Now let's go ahead and transition over to the defensive side of the ball, and we're going to kind of break up the defensive line into 2 groups. We're going to do edge, and then we're going to do defensive tackle. Just because I think there's so many guys there on the defensive line that we kind of need to separate it a little bit. So we'll start with the edge position, the defensive ends. And I'm going to go with a guy that kind of flashed for me this spring, specifically in the spring game. He looked different, in my opinion, and that is A.J. Hoffler. That guy flashed for me in a big way in the spring game. He looked hungry out there. He looked like he was playing inspired. Obviously, Chris Rump has been a big motivator for him. He's obviously kind of kicked him in the gear a bit. I can't wait to see what that guy eventually becomes at Clemson. He's going to be a problem, I think, and I can't wait to see what kind of role he carves out this season, because obviously we know we got T.J. Parker, we got Peter Woods, you got some other guys in that room, but I'm excited to see what A.J. Hoffler, the role that he carves out for himself this season, because, I mean, he looked like a problem in that spring game. So I think he's one of the more exciting players to kind of see how they put it all together on the field this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Hoffler was my pick as well. So there's not much more to say. I mean, he really did flash a ton this spring, and I'm really excited to see how he looks. But some other guys. I see somebody in the chat that mentioned Darian Mayo, true freshman. We'll see. I do think he's a guy that could potentially work his way into that rotation. Jaheim Lawson has gotten a ton of love, and we've been hearing how much love he's gotten him. He's flashed a good bit in that spring game. So he's another guy for me that I would throw out there that I think we really haven't talked about a ton this offseason. But if Jaheim Lawson can kind of, I think from a pass rushing standpoint, he's one of the best on the team, but can he do that consistent play? Can he set the edge? Does he understand his run fits? Like, that's something that obviously needs to be a big part of his game as well. Because, I think as good as the defense was last year, so one thing they didn't do well was containing explosive run plays. They gave up, they were overall a solid run defense, but they did give up some big plays on the ground. And, some of that was due to play on the edge. So can you get, that better play from that standpoint, and can Jaheim from a personal standpoint get better in that aspect. So. But yeah, excited for this edge room. There's a lot of unknowns for a lot of reasons, but we'll kind of see. We haven't even talked about Caden Story. You still have Kay Denhoff.
Yep.
Zaire Patterson is still there. Maybe he figures it out. Maybe he doesn't.
Can he get it going? Can Chris Rump finally get his motor going somehow? Because look, it's crazy to think how highly recruited Kay Denhoff and Zaire Patterson were, and
both top 100 kids.
Non-existent impact that they've had on the field so far. Now, hopefully, Chris Rumpf can turn that around, because those two guys can be really good. So we'll see what he can do with those guys. All right, let's move right along to defensive tackle, Jordan. I'll let you have this one first. So, who is your pick for the wild card in the defensive tackle room for the Tigers?
Yeah, this one came down to two guys for me, and I kind of struggled when I was thinking about it, but I kind of went with the one that is just kind of my personal favorite. It's really a personal preference. I'm going to go with Stephylan Green. I really love Stephylan Green coming out of high school. He was honestly my favorite defensive line, commit in that entire class, more than Peter Woods in some respects. And Vic Burley. So, but I think the ceiling is extremely high with Stephylan Green, and I think you saw a ton of that. Spring game certainly he flashed, but he's been a consistent presence when you've talked when they've asked coaches. I'm really excited for him, and interested to see kind of how he factors into that rotation, because you still have some veterans too, and Peyton Page and Trey Williams. Like it, and obviously DeMonte Capehart he's a load of his own. So, this defensive tackle room is really exciting. I'm going to go with Stephylan Green because I do think he could, play a big role if he really, puts it together. Because I think the ceiling is extremely high with him.
Yeah, this is a position group where you lost quite a bit to the NFL draft, right? So. But it was one of the deeper position groups that Clemson had. So I'm going to go with DeMonte Capehart. I know he's been around the Clemson program for a very long time, but he hasn't really done much on the field consistently. And I really think this is his season to kind of put it all together, maybe earn some money for himself, get his draft stock up really high. And he's just, the dude's a massive individual, 6'5", 320 pounds, whatever he is. Like he's just massive. And when you're replacing the guys that you're replacing in the middle of that defense, I think he is going to be a integral piece of this defense and anchoring that defensive line. So I think DeMonte Capehart for me is that wild card, that breakout type player that could really have a special season for the Tigers. Let's go ahead and move on to linebacker. Now, this is a position where obviously we lost, some big time talent to the NFL draft again, but we get a guy in Barrett Carter that comes back, right? You got a guy in Wade Woodaz that is coming back. So you have some good experience coming back in that linebacker room. A guy that I'm going to kind of pick as my wild card for the linebacker room is Kobe McLeod. This is a guy that has flashed at times, has shown his ability at times. Sammy Brown was a guy that obviously crossed my mind. He's a 5-star recruit. He's probably the more obvious pick here. But I tried to go with somebody that wasn't too obvious to everybody, so I went with Kobe McLeod. I think he could really carve out a nice role for himself this season. Obviously, the depth behind those few guys that I mentioned in Wade Woodaz and Barrett Carter, obviously we got to build some depth behind there. Sammy Brown is obviously going to factor into. He's going to be on the field this season. Everybody knows it. So kind of a more behind-the-scenes type of pick. I went Kobe McLeod. What do you think for the linebacker room? Who's your wild card?
Yeah, I think my pick was Sammy Brown just because I do think that, I do think he's going to play, but it really is just, how much does he factor into this room? And I think that's kind of where the wild card aspect comes in. I do think because I think there's a world where Sammy Brown is a kind of a spot role player as a true freshman and special teams guy. And then I think there's a world where he is ready to go and is a big time playmaker, for this defense. So I do think there's a wide range of outcomes, as far as his freshman season goes, because I think the ceiling and what he'll eventually become, I think is, I don't think I have to say it. So I'm going to go with Sammy Brown. I see people in the chat mentioning Jamal Anderson. I felt like Jamal Anderson was a little like when I was looking, when I was thinking about this, I really thought that, Jamal Anderson is kind of the obvious next in line guy. I mean, we know, like we saw what he was capable of in the spring, and I think he's a guy that is really going to be out there a ton. So I tried to pick a guy that where it was like, okay, I could see him being a big time starter or basically starter and then I could see him being just kind of a rotation, maybe, spot, role player and special teams guy. So I went and it's kind of cheating with Sammy Brown because I tried to do as little true freshman as possible. But I do think it's him for me. Other guys, obviously, the other guys in the room are certainly wild cards in their own right as well. I mean, how much does D. Creighton, improve? You already mentioned Kobe McLeod. Some of the other true freshmen. How does C.J. Kuba Taylor come in? And a lot of guys in this room. It's a really talented linebacker room, but beyond your two starters. There's still some kind of some flux there as far as where the pecking order is. But I went with Sammy Brown. So,
yeah, I think that's a really good pick. We know Sammy Brown's going to be on the field, but again, like you bring up, Jordan, how much, right? What is his true role on this Clemson defense? Because as we've talked about in the past, there's a lot of responsibility given to the linebacker position in this Clemson defense. So how quickly does he pick that stuff up? We know he's physically capable of playing right now, but how quickly does that mental stuff catch up as far as learning the defense, being comfortable, recognizing formations, and diagnosing plays and stuff like that? So all of that remains to be seen. Let's go ahead and move on to the safety position, Jordan, and you can go ahead and lead us off here. Who is your wild card in the safety room? This is a deep room as well for the Tigers.
Yeah, there are a lot of different guys you could kind of throw out there. When I was thinking about the safety room, it was kind of the same thing with linebacker. I was like, who's a guy that I could see kind of fading into the background or kind of blossoming? And so I picked a guy that I felt has that's been in the program that just hasn't really he hasn't broken out yet. And I think that's Sherrod Koval. I think he's a guy that, I could very easily see working his way and being a big time playmaker if everything comes together. And then there's also a world where, maybe it's somebody else that kind of steps up, whether it's, Kylan Griffin or Robert Billings or, I can go through the list, but Kylan Webb, they're Ricardo Jones, the true freshman. There's a lot of guys in this room that, you've heard really positive things about. But I do think Sherrod Koval is a guy. I think he's the biggest wild card because if he does figure it out, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm telling you, that guy can. he's a dog. He has that mentality that you want in a safety, especially playing downhill. Loves to hit. If he really puts it together, it's going to be a lot of fireworks on the back end of that defense. So I went with Sherrod Koval.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go with a pretty veteran guy, a guy that I don't really know what his role for this team's going to be this year, and that is Tyler Venables, a guy that's been hurt a lot, but a veteran presence, a guy that knows this defense in and out, kind of a coach player on the field, if you will. And I put him out there just because I'm interested to see what kind of role he takes on for this defense this year. You mentioned all the guys that are competing for reps in the safety room. This is a very deep room. There's a lot of young guys that have a ton of potential and have flashed for this defensive back group and the safety group. So I'm interested to see where kind of Tyler Venables falls in the pecking order of those things and what kind of role that he plays for the Tigers in the back end of this defense this year.
I like it. It's a good pick, and because he's a veteran, and they're going to want to get him on the field. But is he? He's coming off of injury, and obviously the ceiling of the younger guys is certainly really intriguing. So there's a lot of different ways I think his season could play out. But he does. It is nice to have him back and healthy as a veteran presence and leader in that room. So that's a good pick.
Yeah. All right, let's go with – we're going to finish up with the cornerback position. I'll go first on this, and then you can wrap it up, and then we'll move on to the next segment. But wrapping up the defense, the cornerback position, this is where we are filling some pretty big voids from the 2023 season. Again, losing talent to the NFL is always bittersweet, right? You're really happy for the player that put in time and gave their all to the university, but it's always a huge void, right? So obviously we're replacing that. The big names that stepped up in lieu of those players is obviously Avion Terrell, stepped up in a huge way late last season as a freshman. Shelton Lewis also was asked to step into a much bigger role. But for my wild card for the cornerback position, I went with a guy that is not a freshman, but he's actually a junior now, and that is Jaden Lucas, a guy that is special at the cornerback position, but for whatever reason has been bitten by the injury bug for pretty much his entire career. We've seen when healthy, when he's on the field, he's a special addition to that cornerback room. He's a guy that can absolutely be a game changer for this Clemson defense, but he just hasn't been able to stay on the field and stay healthy for an entire season. So my wild card is if you can get a guy like Jaden Lucas to be healthy for an entire season, he is going to be a big piece of this defense, and he's going to get a lot of reps at the cornerback position. I just don't know if he's going to be able to stay healthy for an entire season. So that remains to be seen, which is why he's my wild card pick for the cornerbacks heading into 2024.
Yep, you and I are in agreement, and I'm kind of surprised because there's multiple guys you could have said, but yeah. I do think Jaden Lucas is kind of there's a wide degree of wide range of outcomes for his season. He's a guy that obviously has been bitten by the injury bug, but the physical talent is unquestionable. I mean, coming out of high school, he's one of the most athletic, corners that's come through Clemson. And so I think it really has been the injuries that have held him back from really kind of putting it all together on the field. And so I think there's a world where, maybe he doesn't find that version of himself again. Yeah. And again, this is a really talented defensive back room. Maybe maybe the younger guys kind of fully supplant him. And, whether it's, a Shelton Lewis or Brandon Strozer or Miles Oliver or obviously Tavoy Fegan as a true freshman, like Corian Gibson as a true freshman. There's a lot of bodies in that room now. And so he's one of the senior guys, not literally, he's a junior, but he's one of the senior members of that room. And so there's a world where he doesn't kind of put it all together and some guys pass him up, or, he finally gets through a season healthy and he puts it all together on the field and he really shines, because I do think that potential is still there. So you and I are in agreement with when it comes to Jaden Lucas. I think that the ceiling is extremely high with him, and he's got to get through a season healthy. And if you do, I mean that only is a positive for the depth of your cornerback room, and which is talented, but a lot of youth at this point.
Yeah, absolutely, man. There's so much potential. I mean, we just kind of spent the last probably 30 plus minutes, maybe longer than that, going through this roster and just kind of giving our wild cards and what we think is to come for some of these position groups when it comes to 2024. And there's a lot to be excited about if you're a Clemson Tiger fan. But again, like we've been saying all offseason, Jordan, it's cautious optimism that we're approaching the season with. We know we've been riding high coming into seasons in the past, and things have not worked out how we thought they were going to. So I'm going to remain cautiously optimistic for the 2024 season. I think there is a world, while we're on the subject of wild cards and varying degrees of how things turn out, there's a world where Clemson puts it together offensively and can have a special season. And then there's a world where the Clemson offense looks exactly like it's looked the past 3 seasons, and it's more of the same, right? You can see both of those scenarios playing out. That's why this is such I think, a pivotal year for the Tigers and the trajectory of this program and where we're headed in the future. So make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you have not already. We have 33 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for showing up. Hit that share button. We are not done with the show yet, but we got a couple more segments to go, and then we're going to turn the show over to you guys in the comment section, and we are going to allow you guys to kind of drive the show, ask us questions. But before we get into that, I'm going to give a quick video of a sponsor of the Voice of College Football. So you're going to see a quick video of Mark Rogers really quick, and then we'll be back to continue on with the show. Again, we got 2 more segments left. We got the BYOG or sale, and then we got around college football, and then we're going to turn the show over to you guys in the chat section. Okay, so bear with me 1 second.
I love what I do as a sports commentator. I have definitely been blessed. I enjoy my career. But I got to say, if I could turn back time, I would learn the business side of sports management, how to manage people, how to manage projects, how to manage situations. And then there's also those times in which you feel stuck in a job, stuck in a career, just feeling that there's a dead end and wondering and waiting, when is that break going to happen? Well, unfortunately, I got to tell you, that break is not coming unless you make it happen. Sports is your passion. You love it, you live it, you breathe it. Why not make your passion your career? Introducing Southern New Hampshire University, our sponsor. At SNHU, you will learn the business side of sports management principles, and how to gather and analyze data. This degree will help you prepare for a career as an athletic director, sports information director, marketing manager, and other exciting roles in the sports industry. You'll be able to tap into SNHU's network of graduates working in sports-related organizations. You'll also have the opportunity to take advantage of an internship or an experiential learning course within the field. Your courses are taught by faculty with real-world experience, so you'll have opportunities to connect with people in the industry. And when you graduate, SNHU will be right there to help you with your job search. SNHU is accredited, nonprofit, and has radically affordable tuition. SNHU was voted one of the country's most innovative universities by U.S. News and World Report. Just go to snhu.edu/VOCFB. The link's also in my description section down below to see if you qualify for SNHU's sports management program. You might be eligible for financial aid or have existing college credits that could fast-track your degree at SNHU. Click the link to get started. Your exciting sports management degree at SNHU awaits you. Do it now.
All right, guys. Thank you for sticking with us through our sponsor. Again, thank you guys for showing up. Hit that like button. And Jordan, let's go ahead and get into the new segment. We're going to debut a new segment on tonight's show. So again, For those of you that are just now joining us, I know we got 37 people in the live chat right now. Make sure you guys hit that like button for us. Subscribe if you haven't already. But we're going to debut a new segment tonight. Again, this is the 75th episode of the All In Show, the 100th live show here on the channel. And we hit 5,000 subscribers this past week. So in that theme and that route of celebration, Jordan, go ahead and kick us off on our new debuted segment for this episode.
Yeah, man. I'm really excited to kind of debut this. It's simple in concept. I really am just really excited because I love the name. I think it's genius. But it really is just a simple buy or sell concept. But I'm calling it BYOG or sell, BYOG or sell. And so we're just going to, bounce, different scenarios for Clemson's 2024 season off of each other. And both of us are either going to buy or BYOG or sell on that scenario, whether it's a, particular player's statistical output, whether it's a personnel change, whatever it is, a certain game that Clemson wins or loses. And so that's kind of the main deal. And you guys are free to participate as well. And what you can go ahead and ask any sort of BYOG or sell questions in the live chat, and we'll star those as well and answer them in the listener portion of the show. But yeah, man, it's pretty simple concept. So I thought it would be kind of fun, and it'd be a good way to be like kind of present our what if scenarios and different things in a fun way. So. You want to go first, or should I go first? I'll
go ahead and go first. Look, it's always fun, guys, especially in the off season where, there's not as much to talk about. There's always stuff to talk about in college football. It's a year-round sport, especially when you're talking recruiting and all that kind of stuff. There's never really nothing to talk about, but it tends to be less to talk about in the off season, obviously. So the what if game is fun to play. So let's play a little what if game, a little BYOG or sell. Love the name, genius. All credit goes to Jordan. So Jordan, let me give you the first one on our segment of BYOG or sell. Clemson gets 10 plus wins this season and wins the ACC and goes back to the college football playoff. Are you buying or selling?
Well, dang, that's a heavy one to start us off with.
I'm going heavy.
Whew. Okay.
10 plus wins.
10 plus wins.
Make and win the conference championship. And then obviously a playoff berth automatic because you win the ACC.
BYOG, baby. BYOG. Let's do it. That is right. I lean right now. Now I could feel different as we get closer to the season.
Absolutely.
But I do really like the makeup of this team. And I obviously that's probably not how everybody's going to feel.
No.
Just because of how the last few seasons have gone. But I do think as the roster is constructed currently and where things sit, I think that's a very, very attainable for this group. I think with the upgrade at offensive line coach, the continuity at quarterback and offensive coordinator, for better or for worse, I think is better. I don't think you'll have quite the same turnover issues that you had last year. I mean, it's kind of easy to say to play that game, but it is the reality that last season, you didn't do yourself a lot of favors with how a lot of those games played out. You weren't flat out inferior to really any team you played last year. And so I think that whether it's a massive jump from Cade or a reasonable a moderate jump from Cade, I think gets you to that 10 win mark. And I think if you win 10 games, I mean that means you only lost 2 games in the regular season, and if one of them is Georgia, then that means you only lost 1 ACC game. I think that's pretty. That sets you up pretty to make it to the ACC title game. And I I do tend to trust Clemson in Charlotte. So I'm leaning BYOG. It might feel differently as we go, but that is a tough one. And you hit me with a heavy one to start, but I like it.
Yeah. We dove for the deep end right off the rip. So I'm going to go with a bye. I think Clemson gets back to the ACC championship game this year. I think we win it, and that will give us an automatic bid to the college football playoff because of winning a conference. So I'm going to go bye. Jordan, what do you got for me?
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to do a little bit different than a schedule prediction.
Okay.
And keep in mind, you guys are free to hold it against us later on, but these are just as things sit right now. Am I buying or selling? And so for this one, I'm going to go with. I've got multiple. I'm trying to think of which one I want to go with first. Clemson has a 1,000-yard rusher.
Oof. Okay.
And they have 3 receivers that hit 500 yards.
1,000-yard rusher.
Three receivers. No, so tight ends do not count.
Okay, 3 receivers. True receivers with 500 yards or more. Oh, man, that's tough. That's tough. I'm comfortable with the 1,000-yard rusher because I think Phil Maffa is probably going to get 1,000 yards. I think he's going to be a heavy primary back this season. I know Clemson will have a 2-back type deal where, they're going to lean on another running back at times, but I truly do think Phil Maffa is more than capable of getting 1,000 yards this season. The 3 wide receivers with 500 or more yards, that's tough. I'm gonna go bye. It's tough for me, but
I'm with you too.
I'm gonna go bye.
And because I thought it would be kind of, and I didn't want to include tight end because then it would be kind of, I think it would be easier to take bye.
Oh, for sure,
I included tight end because if
you would have gave me tight end, it would have been much easier to buy that because obviously we know what we have at tight end and the difference maker. But yeah, I'm gonna go bye. I don't feel like great about it, but again, I'm gonna go bye.
Okay, that was a difficult one because I was like, okay, well, if you can't say tight end, well, now you have to factor. Okay, so how many targets and touches do I think Jake Brenningstool and the rest of that tight end room is going to get? And then again, this wide receiver room, there's a lot of bodies here, and only so many guys, only so many touches to go around. So it's like, who's going to hit, get enough run to get 500 yards? It doesn't sound like a lot, but 3 receivers, but when you think about this room and how many guys you expect to rotate in and out, it does make that decision a little bit more difficult. So I thought that was
just look at the past couple of years. Like 500's been hard to come by for Clemson receivers in the past 2-3 years. So that's definitely not a gimme for sure. All right, I got another one for you, Jordan. Clemson will have a 1,000-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard receiver.
I'm selling.
Buy or sell?
I'm selling.
You selling?
Yeah, I'm selling, unfortunately. But I think it's for the reasons that you mentioned that we already talked about. It's a kind of a good thing. I think there's too many guys in this room. I don't think there's an obvious, high volume guy that's emerged yet. So as it sits right now, I'm selling. Obviously, maybe I feel different. It come fall, especially with the arrival of TJ Moore and Christian Bentaker as well. And how that factors into the target share. But I think that's a fairly easy sell right now because of the bodies in the room, which sucks because Clemson is they've kind of been expected over the years. Oh man, we're going to have a 1,000-yard rusher. We're going to have a guy hit 1,000 yards, but haven't done it since 2020. Amari Rogers last year. So that's kind of the reality of it. But now I think you're at a point where there's so many guys that are very clearly in the guys you want to get on the field. There's not really as much separation between a lot of these guys where it's like, okay, well, here's your clear tier 1, here's your clear tier 2 and tier 3 and all that. I think there's a lot more fluidity there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I sell on that one. I don't even think we get close to 1,000-yard receiver this year.
Yeah.
Maybe 700 at the most for one guy.
All right. Okay, I'm going with a pretty straightforward one. No, but another stat one, but less. It's not a combination of stats. Clemson has a double-digit sack producer this year.
Ooh, I buy on that. Yep.
Keep in mind, Clemson has not had a player hit double-digit sacks since 2018. I believe Cleveland Farrell had 11, I think, in 2018. So it's been a while, and it kind of shows you, and it's kind of indicative of sort of the decline that Clemson has had from a sack production standpoint, from the edge position in particular. So, I'm going to go sell.
You're selling
right now.
Okay,
that's tough though.
I like our
I think the guy to do it would be TJ Parker, but
that's what I say. And the reason I say buy, it's not an easy buy, I don't think.
Yeah.
But the reason that I like it is because TJ Parker now has opposite him Peter Woods.
Yeah.
So I think you're not going to be able to put as many resources over there to key on TJ Parker, right? Because you got Peter Woods on the other side, right? And I think you got a couple other guys behind them that could kind of play some key roles in that rotation. So it's not a clean cut. You don't have to think about it, but I think you're right. I think we will have a double-digit sack guy, and I think it'll be TJ Parker. If I had to pick somebody, he would definitely be the one.
All right, yeah, and man, that'd be refreshing to see because I think somebody was close. I think Trenton Simpson was close in 2021. I think he had 9 or 9.5. But we haven't had we haven't had a double-digit sack guy in 6 years now, which is hard to believe given Clemson's pedigree on the defensive line.
All right. I got one for you, Jordan.
All right.
I got one for you. This is going to be about Cade Klubnik.
All right.
So get ready. Cade Klubnik throws twice as many touchdowns as he does interceptions in 2024.
I think that's a pretty easy buy. BYOG, I'll say. Because he did it. Technically, he did it last year. He threw 19 touchdowns, 9 picks.
Yeah.
I do expect Cade to be better than he was last season. Now that's obviously has a very wide range of meanings. So that could mean, okay, well, maybe he doesn't fumble as much, but he still throws the same amount of picks and doesn't hit. He's still sitting at around 2,600 yards and maybe 21, 22 touchdowns instead of 19. And maybe he runs for a couple more scores, or it could be a massive jump. But I do think that he will. I do think he can. I think 2-1 in Garrett Riley's system is pretty attainable because as disastrous as Clemson's turnover issues were last year, he still threw more touchdowns than interceptions. Now, when you factor in fumbles, I think that's a different story, which is honestly, I think that would have been a tougher question if you said total turnovers versus if he had twice as many touchdowns as total turnovers. Then that would make me think.
That's true. I should have done that. That would have made it a lot harder. Dang, I wish I would have thought about that.
Yeah. But if honestly, even then, I would still, maybe I would sell. I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. But yeah, 2-1, I think is pretty attainable. And it should that should at least be what happens. So I'm gonna go BYOG there. Okay, I'll let this. You want this to be the last one, or do you want to go one more round? I know I still have to give you yours to finish this round, but I just was wondering.
You do this one, and then we'll go one more round, and that'll be it.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Whew. All right, this one's going to be a schedule one, but it's not going to be about a prediction.
Okay.
It's not going to be like a game prediction. It's going to be about the opponent. Florida State will not be the toughest ACC opponent on Clemson's schedule this year.
Ooh.
BYOG or so.
I'm trying to remember who all we play.
So okay, I can pull up the schedule real quick, but you have Stanford, you have, in no particular order, you have NC State, you have Louisville, you have excuse me, I'm blanking. Virginia Tech.
Ooh, that's tough.
They don't play Georgia. They don't play Georgia Tech this year. What else am I thinking of?
I'm gonna buy.
Okay,
I'm buying.
All right. Whew. I thought this one would be I thought that would be a spicy one because it's kind of.
I'm gonna buy. But that's not gonna be the toughest game for Clemson.
Okay. I'm leaning sell right now, but I thought that was I thought it was going to be interesting to see what you said and kind of where the chat kind of falls on it as well, because Florida State does have obviously Mike Norvell's system and what he's done to kind of bring that program back to competitiveness is really impressive. But when you consider what they lost from last season, you bring in DJ Uiagalelei, who I think will give you some sort of baseline of quarterback play, but
he's not Jordan Travis.
He's not Jordan Travis from a dynamic playmaking ability standpoint. The receivers certainly, as it sits right now, don't appear to be anywhere what they were last year. I do think they're still going to be pretty good defensively, but it's not the same. When you factor in the quarterback and wide receiver, I do think that there was a significant downgrade from a collective standpoint, and so that from an offensive standpoint, maybe Florida State isn't quite the menacing presence that they were last year, and with a healthy Jordan Travis at least.
Yeah, I just like our defense's chances with a quarterback like DJ. I'm not talking bad about him. I'm really not. But I just like our defense's chances. If you start pressuring him and get him uncomfortable back there, I think it could turn into a long day for him. And then you think about a team like NC State with the addition of a Grayson McCall, a guy that can get outside the pocket and hurt you in those ways. I think a quarterback like that scares me more than, a DJ Uiagalelei scares me. As far as kind of exposing your defense, right? And then you got Virginia Tech. A lot of people are high on Virginia Tech. That's not a fun place to play. Clemson's on the road there. That could be a very tough game for Clemson if everybody's right about Virginia Tech. So reluctantly, I'll buy. Maybe partly just to rile up FSU fans.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting teams on, and it's funny because the schedule is so front loaded. So it's like we're going to find out, pretty quickly, where these teams kind of sit in the pecking order of the ACC. You mentioned Virginia Tech, NC State, who beat you last year as well. And they brought in Grayson McCall, and they're trying to put it together offensively and finally take that next step under Dave Doran. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a more interesting question. If you're not from an outside perspective, people would be like, "What? Florida State not the best team on your ACC schedule? What?" But then if you are paying attention to and you follow the ACC, you're like, okay, well maybe that's, and especially when you consider what Florida State lost from last season, it's not quite as easy of a question to answer. So I thought that was a fun one. All right, final round.
All right, final round. All right, last one for me, Jordan. I'm going to go to game 1, August 31st of 2024. Clemson will travel down to Atlanta, Georgia to take on the Georgia Bulldogs, obviously. Here's where I'm going. Buy or sell, BYOG or sell, Clemson has 1 or fewer turnovers in the game.
Oh,
1 or fewer.
Yeah, as it sits right now, I got to sell. I got to sell. Well, you're saying offensive turnovers, like Clemson don't force it. They don't. It's not Clemson forces 1 or 0 turnovers.
They're offensively they turn the ball over
0 or 1.
Yeah.
I got to sell until I see this team. When you're coming off a season where you turn the ball over in every game and you turned the ball over multiple times in over half of your games, it's just kind of it's kind of is what it is. You have to you kind of have to go, but that doesn't necessarily illustrate how I feel about Clemson's chances of competing in that game. But
right.
I can't with good conscience say that we don't turn the ball, especially and really maybe it's not even a product of Clemson has the same old turnover issues as last year. It really is just Georgia's defense is that good.
That could be a really good defense.
Really damn good.
We're gonna play the best defense we're gonna play all season, at least scheduled. In our very first game of the season. So
it's kind of hard to say that we don't you don't turn the ball over more than once as it sits right now, because Georgia's defense is really they're really, I mean, they're Georgia. You can't really, there's not really much to say. It's kind of obvious. But yeah, I'm gonna sell for now. But if you were a time traveler and you go to the future and you see the game and you come back and tell me, hey, Clemson only turned the ball over once, or they didn't turn the ball over at all. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that Clemson won the game, and it very well could still mean Clemson gets run off the field, for all we know. But I think I would lean towards, especially with what I think Clemson's defense is going to be. I think it would be a more competitive game than, maybe, if you turn the ball over, 2-3 plus times, obviously. So,
okay. I'm selling. I'm selling on that. I believe it when I see it. There ain't no way.
Yeah.
At least
it really is incredible how this team managed to turn the ball over in every single like that.
Yeah.
That is an impressive feat, last year. But it also makes you wonder, but it also is like, well, you really can't get any worse than that. Knock on wood. And if you eliminate even, a quarter or half, maybe a couple of those results are different from last year, and we're talking about the season a little bit different. So, yeah, but that's an interesting one. All right, I was thinking about which one where I wanted to go with this. Okay. I can't really frame it as over under, but Clemson has I'm going back and forth on two different ones, and I keep wanting to. I have to pick one. All right. BYOG or sell.
Okay.
Clemson finishes with a top 25 scoring offense.
Ooh.
That can mean that can mean anything from 1 to 25.
Top 25 scoring offense. Man, that's tough. Because we were what, 50 something?
I believe we were scoring offense. Yeah, we weren't very good from a per play metric standpoint, but I know from a scoring offense standpoint, I think we were 50. We were in the 50s or something like that. Because we were a very efficient offense, but we weren't explosive at all. So that explains the low per play average.
I'm gonna sell.
Ooh, okay.
I'm gonna sell right now. I'm gonna sell.
All right. Well,
I don't know.
I'm gonna BYOG, but that one's difficult because
It's tough.
Yeah.
I want to buy. I really do. I don't know if we take that big of a jump. That's big time. I mean, you're talking probably what, 25, 30 slots we got to jump from last season to this season, which is not outside of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't know.
Let me pull up the 20. I just want to see kind of where things sat last season.
Yeah, where were we last year?
Well, I know where we were last year, but I kind of want to see what the top 25 looked like, and kind of what range that is. I'm gonna use team rankings isn't accurate because they filter out FCS stats, games against FCS teams, but I just kind of want to see the general idea. LSU was number 1. So the top 25, the 25th best scoring offense on team rankings was Missouri, and they averaged 32.3 points per game versus FBS opponents.
Okay.
Okay. I think when you put it in that, I don't think it's that unattainable.
Yeah.
It really isn't that much. Now that's every season is different, and there's some variance in how that would look, how a top 25 would look, from this season, because obviously it's just different offenses, and that's just how averages work. But I think in that general range from 30 to 35 points would put you squarely, and obviously up would put you squarely in that range of 20, top 25, maybe 25 to 35. So I'm going to say BYOG.
Okay.
Because I think this team will move the ball. And I do think I both think that this team will be able to move the ball and put together drives, because that's something that Clemson did do plenty of times last year. They just didn't finish them. So I think if you even finish at an average rate and not the abysmal, rate that you were last year, I think that should put you squarely in that range to get top 25, even if you're not top, scoring 40 points a game. So I'm gonna BYOG. But I do think there's a world where that doesn't happen, because the range is can be different from year to year. But I thought that was an interesting one.
All right, yeah, let's buy. You made me change my mind. Let's buy.
I wasn't trying to convince.
It's good.
You.
It's good. I'm with you.
I was just explaining my reasoning.
Let's buy it. You convinced me.
All right.
So yeah, that was fun, guys. We'll do that again next week. So you guys in the comment section can come with some of your own as well, and maybe we'll add some of those to the segment. So that's our brand new BYOG or sales segment. We still got 30 people in the live chat. Thank you guys so much for being here. We're about to go through our last segment quickly, and then we're going to get to some comments and questions. and chop it up with you guys for a little bit at the end of the show before we wrap it up and get out of here. So again, hit that like button if you haven't already. If you're not subscribed, please go ahead and consider subscribing and hanging out with us. Me and Jordan do this show every single week. 5:30 on Friday is our new time slot. We started that last week. We used to do it on Thursday nights, but now we're doing it on Friday nights. So Jordan, let's go ahead and get into our last segment, and that is around college football. And I don't know if you know, Jordan, you probably know because everybody knows, but EA Sports has been busy for a little bit now. One, they got this huge game coming out. I don't know if you've heard of it, but EA Sports College Football 25 is coming out on July 19th. And it's probably one of, if not the most anticipated game in history of, at least for EA for sure. I'm not a big connoisseur of video games, but this game's going to make a ton of money. And it's got a ton of hype around it. And EA Sports is out here just poking college football fans.
They're riling up some feathers, man.
They're ruffling up the feathers. They're riling up the fan bases. They're pitting rival teams against each other with these lists that they are coming out with. So let's go ahead and quickly go through these lists, and we'll get some thoughts from you about this list. Okay, so first and foremost, we're going to start with the top 10 toughest places to play according to EA Sports. Okay, so I'm going to quickly rattle off these top 10. Clemson is omitted from this top 10. So if you've been living under a rock and you haven't seen this list already, I'm not about to say Clemson, okay? But we're going to talk about the teams that did make the top 10. Number 1 was Texas A&M. Number 2, Alabama. Number 3, LSU. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 5, Georgia. Number 6, Penn State. Number 7, Wisconsin. Number 8, Oklahoma. Number 9, FSU. And number 10, Florida, to round out your top 10. Jordan, what are your thoughts about this top 10 toughest places to play?
I think my first reaction when I saw that list was, what was the criteria? Because they said it was a mix of, historical, win-loss record and I don't know, crowd size and they said it was this formula, and they had a criteria that they used, but none of it seemed to make sense, and especially from a actual atmosphere standpoint. I didn't understand it. Some of the placements on this list. From a Clemson standpoint, the arguments are obvious. Clemson's lost 3 games at home in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. And those 3 losses were by 1 point, and in overtime. So I don't understand from that perspective. Clemson is documented as one of the loudest stadiums in all of college football. They number 2 or number 3 on the all-time decibel record.
They ranked number 2 on the all-time decimal. Recorded decimals.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of claims out there for a lot of different stadiums, but the recorded decimals, I think it's Oregon 1, Clemson 2.
Yeah, I'm with you. I didn't understand I don't understand how, if you're making a modern you're making a modern college football game, and not having Clemson, who's had one of the best home field advantages in the sport, over the last decade. I don't understand. I don't understand what you're doing. And I think just some of the placements were strange. Kyle Field. Okay. I mean, they're honestly, their home record isn't that good, but they are loud.
It's pretty bad, actually. Their home record's pretty bad.
Yeah. It's not great when you compare to the rest of the teams. I think they've lost 18 games at home, and since I think in the last 10 years, it's something like that. It's way more than, some of the other teams on this list. But I understand that, you know, it's not all about win loss, because sometimes it's just your team isn't good, but it's still a
Right,
tough,
yeah.
it's still a very tough place to play. But and Clemson wasn't the only team that I felt got omitted. So I don't want this to be a, you know, Clemson is, you know, the center of college football and everything, because there were teams that
Tennessee wasn't top 10.
yeah, exactly. Neyland Stadium wasn't there.
Neyland Stadium wasn't top 10.
Jordan Hare in
Hare
Auburn wasn't
Stadium
there.
was not top 10.
Yeah, like I'm just
They had
like
Auburn. So 12, 13, and 14 is Clemson, Tennessee, and Auburn.
that's disgusting.
So
That's disgusting, man. I just, and I'm not an SEC homer, so I'm far from it. But I don't know how you have a top 10 list without Neyland or Jordan Hare, and I think Clemson is right there in that conversation.
Those are like iconic venues.
Like, and I'm not even asking Clemson to be like top 5, like number. Like I was like, how does Clemson not even make the top 10? And then you have like. I'm going to say this, and people are, you know, if hopefully there are no Alabama fans watching, but Alabama's home field advantage is not all that special.
Their home field advantage is because of their football team, and probably less to do with the environment.
Yeah.
Again, you could say that for a lot of the good teams, but like, I mean, there's like a few places you think of when you think of like absolutely crazy fan bases. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know that Alabama deserved to be number 2.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they don't have a great atmosphere, but I don't know about
Ohio
2.
State is the same. Ohio State is the same. It's not. That's not like I don't know how you put Ohio State that high. What were they? Number 3? Where was Ohio State on that list?
I mean, you're telling me that Ohio State has is a tougher place to play than Auburn or Tennessee?
It's not.
It's
like I felt like they only got placed there from a logo standpoint and a capacity standpoint, because it's a huge Ohio. The Shoe is a huge stadium. It's there. So it's like, but the crowd and like the stadium itself is really, really spread out. Like the crowd isn't really that on top of the field. Like the sidelines are really large. There's just not on the field. It's not nearly as loud as you would expect a 100,000 capacity, you know, stadium to sound like. Now they can get loud, especially for the big game when Michigan comes to town. So it's like Ohio's not this is all like relative, like, because like none of these atmospheres on this list are terrible, like by any means. So like I want people to I want to make that clear. Like these are like but it's kind of it's a relative thing.
Yeah.
But
and again, everybody's going to have differences of opinion.
I'm surprised LSU wasn't number 1, and you know I'm one to be like, Clemson's real Death Valley and all that, but
for sure, yeah.
But just from an atmosphere standpoint, I don't think there's anything better than LSU.
So like LSU is a fan base. I
understand what they were thinking when they put this list together.
LSU is a fan base that you think of like those people are absolutely insane.
They're crazy. They are insane.
I've never been to LSU Stadium, but I don't think you got to go there to know that their fan base is like certifiable. They're nuts. They're crazy people. So I could just imagine what that game day atmosphere is like. So, I'm with you. I'm surprised they weren't number 1. You hear about the noise there all the time. You know what that fan base is like. So, but again, everybody's going to have problems with anytime you do a list like this. No one's going to agree. People are going to get feelings hurt. But I think definitely Clemson is a top 10 tough place to play in college football. You know, some people may call that bias, but that's just how I see it. I've been to several big-time games at Clemson, and it is an absolute and insane environment to be in. But again, a lot of these schools have claims to that, and you can make arguments. But, you know, Clemson definitely has the home record to go along with the game day environment they provide, right? So it's twofold with Clemson. I think it's an extremely loud stadium. You got the entrance of running down the hill, so you have the big game day atmosphere, and then you have your home record of you've only lost 3 games in a decade.
Yeah.
At home. That's huge.
You
I don't care.
You had the longest home winning streak in this century.
Yeah.
Like that's 40 games in a row. Like that's one of the longest home winning streaks of all time. Like I don't understand how you get you don't even make crack the top 10, especially like Florida State, like Doak, and I think Doak Campbell, it used to be, I think like 10 years ago, I think it absolutely belonged in the top 10. But I think with some of the renovations and stuff, and like they've kind of like their capacity has dropped a little bit. And obviously Florida State not being good, up until recently, within from 2017 through 2021, like that, I think that did a number like that. They're not one of those fan bases that, shows out and creates a crazy environment week in and week out. And I think they belong in that, discussion. Like, I think like I wouldn't have them outside the top 15, but over Clemson, I don't understand it. But all right, we spent enough time on that. I want to get to the listener. I want to get to the rest of the list, and then we can and kind of get through the segment. So,
all right,
what are we doing here, man?
Yeah, I completely disagree with a lot of what the list had on it, but again, a lot of people do. So, my opinion is Clemson should be top 10. But let's go ahead and move on with the list where Clemson probably got a little bit more love than I thought they would. But Clemson, or EA Sports, not Clemson, EA Sports came out with a top 10 offenses and defenses, right? And Clemson was sitting at number 10 for offenses, shockingly enough, at a number 87 overall, and number 5 defense at a 90 overall. For the offenses, it was number 1 Georgia, number 2 Oregon, number 3 Alabama, number 4 Texas, number 5 Ohio State, number 6 LSU, number 7 Miami, number 8 Colorado, number 9 Missouri, and Clemson rounded out the top 10 in the offensive category. Jordan, what are your thoughts? Are you surprised by Clemson being in the top 10 of offenses? We just got finished talking about their offenses. So are their offense in our buy-sell segment. So what were your thoughts on them making the top 10?
Which are we on, the offense or the defense?
Offense, yeah. The offensive side of the ball. They were 10th in offense behind Missouri, Colorado. Colorado's another weird one that made it on the list. Miami, LSU, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, Oregon, and Georgia. Those were your top 10.
Yeah.
I don't think Clemson deserves to be in the top 10. Not even close.
Yeah, compared to the last list, there's no reason to have Clemson in the top 10. No, just I think that was kind of the funny part of this whole thing. I was like, okay, yeah, Clemson doesn't have any business being here. Not much more to it, and I think that was kind of I think it was partially a projection sort of thing, and also just Clemson is going to be a popular team to play with, so they kind of gave them a little boost. But these ratings are subject to change. But yeah, there wasn't really any reason to have Clemson or Colorado for that matter in the top 10, other than they're popular. They would be popular teams to play with. But
yeah, look, and I know Clemson gets talked about a lot because of Dabo Swinney and his stance on the portal, and for obvious reasons that we've already outlined on this channel. But Clemson being top 10, I don't think they have any business being there. Obviously, Clemson has a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, they've recruited well on that side of the ball, but top 10 is crazy to me, and that's coming from 2 Clemson fans. So. Now, moving to the defensive side of the ball, Jordan, let's go ahead and outline this list. Clemson was ranked 5th. Ohio State was 1 at a 96 overall. Georgia was 2 at a 94 overall. Oregon was 3 at 90. Alabama was 4 at 90. Clemson was 5 at 90. Notre Dame 6 at 90. Number 7 was Michigan at 90 overall. Texas, Penn State, and Utah round out the top 10. So Clemson, top 10 in offense, top 5 in defense, according to EA Sports, heading into the 2024 season. So, Jordan, thoughts about Clemson's defense being ranked a 90 overall and ranked number 5th?
I think that's definitely a more a sensible ranking.
It's a little bit more believable, right?
Yeah, where Clemson was last year, they were top 10 in basically every metric. Obviously really really good defense, and a lot of the reason why they were able to win 9 games. And obviously they have a lot coming back, and a lot of young talent that's going to be stepping up. I think that's about right. So now there are probably some people have questions about other placements on the list and kind of where they fit, but I think top 5 to 10 is right for Clemson as a pre season sort of projection. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'll see kind of what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. Look, the lists are what they are. I think they're simply to generate clicks and generate conversation and generate buzz around EA Sports, the college football game that's coming out on the July 19th. And obviously the marketers are doing their job in creating all sorts of buzz around the game and constantly talking about EA and all of that stuff. So shout out to them for being good marketers and getting everyone to talk about it. And the best way to do that is to troll a bunch of college football fans with some lists and get them all up in arms and their feathers ruffled about it. So genius move by EA Sports. Can't be mad at them for it. And with all of that, Jordan, let's go ahead and get to the comment section. We've been on here for 2 hours already. That was a pretty lengthy show already, but we are finally through our planned portion. Let's go ahead and turn it over to the comment section. We got 31 people in the live chat right now. If you haven't hit that like button, please hit that like button for us. Get your questions in. We've already starred some, but go ahead and get your questions in. If you want to be sure to get your question read on the show, hit that super chat for us. It supports what me and Jordan do here on the All In Show, and also guarantees that your question gets read and responded to on the show. If not, that's all good. We just enjoy you guys being here, commenting, and hanging out with us.
Absolutely. So let's dive on in and see what you guys are talking about. All right. I did star some questions from earlier. So let's hit those. And of course, the super chat is available if you want to make sure that your comment is read. Rooster earlier in the show, he said, Ole Miss losing commits right and left. Not sure what's going on out there. I mean, when you're a program that, kind of is more of you put a ton of emphasis on recruiting out of the portal, and, there's just a lot more flux in kind of how, your roster, your recruiting apparatus kind of works, because that's something that teams are going to negatively recruit you against you for. Is if you're a heavy portal team, like it's like, well, they might say they want you, but as soon as you get there, you get they're just going to bring in a veteran guy from the portal, and you're never going to see the field. And that's not universal. And some of, like in Ole Miss's case, like Dylan Alfred was more of a he had a lot of interest in Clemson, and that was just kind of, Clemson wasn't going to offer unless he decommitted. So, and then that was just kind of where things led. But in other cases, that's kind of the deal. And, Ole Miss has a really good, they have a pretty good NIL situation, but, you only can use so much. And if it kind of goes hand in hand with sort of their portal strategy. Now, but it is interesting to see how many all at once have happened, but you definitely got to wonder what's going on, behind the scenes. But I'm not mad at it, because very well could be benefiting Clemson here in the near future. David Wood says, heard Sanders doesn't have Clemson in his top 3 now. I wouldn't say like they're not in his top three. It's not very clear. I don't know if there is a true top three. I think there's a very clear, number one and number two right now, and where everybody else kind of fits is kind of kind of up in the air. I do think, like, if I had to project right now, I would say that he probably I like Tennessee the best because I think they offer the best mix of proximity, and there's certainly a lot of NIL opportunity for him there. But it's still kind of fluid, and he's coming off his visit to Ohio State, and they definitely feel like they have a good shot as well, and it's kind of a wait and see type of thing. David says, could you guys be consistent with your days and times, please? Well, David, we did make an announcement when we made the change, and this will be permanent for, well, at least for the near future, until we announce otherwise. But we had to make a schedule change. So always, check the community tab, because that's where we do post. And I know not everybody sees that, but do check the community tab and see if there's, when there's any schedule changes. But we'll try to, give you guys a heads up, and we gave you guys a heads up that there would be a schedule change the show before we made the change. So just look out for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't want to make the change. I really did like our show on Thursday night.
Me too.
But I just got a lot going on in my schedule, a lot of scheduling conflicts, and this time is 5:30 on Friday night is kind of where me and Jordan's schedule lined up. We're kind of working through my schedule. He's got a lot going on as well. We both got separate lives and jobs and stuff that we do. So sorry for all the changes recently, but hopefully we can kind of stick here for a little while again. But there could always be change. Schedules change and all that kind of stuff. But we'll try to do a little bit of a better job kind of blasting it out on the channel, maybe making like a short video for you guys, just letting you guys know the change instead of just a post on the community page. So maybe that's something we'll do in the future to kind of try to blast it out a little bit more so everybody's on the same page. But thanks for always being here and supporting us, David. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. John said earlier, he said, if Clemson beats Georgia, not impossible, college football world would go nuts. Yeah, I mean, that would be massive, and it would definitely be a tone setter, honestly, quite literally, because you play noon that Saturday. So it would reverberate, through that entire day. So that would be massive, and definitely a very obvious sign that Clemson is trending back in the right direction. So fun to think about. But it's not impossible. You're right. It's definitely a uphill battle. Jay says it's going to be tough sledding until Matt Luke improves what's in-house. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the reality. You're battling a negative perception that has persisted for over a decade from a offensive line production standpoint. You haven't put a ton of guys in the league. They haven't, and you haven't gotten great play at times, especially, and obviously the last few years have certainly made a larger dent in that. So that's kind of the reality. But you do see what Matt Luke's pull in general in attracting and getting these guys to campus, I think, is going to pay dividends a lot more in the next class, especially if you get a good product on the field this year. So that's the thing you're battling with, and that's kind of, it would have been nice because I felt like you did have a chance to get some of your higher guys on your board, and you did get a couple, and so you're not leaving here with nothing, but it's not it's not exactly to the degree that you wanted, and so, but again, we'll see how they pivot, because we could look back when the December signing day comes and we're like, okay, well, I think we're in pretty good shape. It was a pretty solid, class to build on. Because I do think you have, three really nice pieces already in the class. But, how do you finish it up? And then can you parlay, any sort of success on the field that, goes into the next cycle? because Clemson is laying the groundwork now for that 2026 cycle. Nobody in particular says BYOG or sell. We cover Vegas odds against Georgia. I think we cover, and if the ball bounces our way, I'm gonna honestly. The spread is what, 13 right now.
Let me check it real quick.
13.5 probably is something.
I think
like
so.
That. I know it's.
I think it's just below 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's been anywhere, and it's been anywhere from 11 to like 14. Just under 14. So I'm not sure where it sits right now, but I'm gonna say BYOG. I don't think it's I think Clemson has a very good opportunity to make this not a complete blowout, and keeping it within 2 touchdowns is certainly not out of the realm of possibility, and I don't think it's not something that would be a massive undertaking, just because I do think Clemson will match up a lot better on the lines of scrimmage than they did the previous meeting. And I think from an offensive standpoint, you're in a better spot than you were in 2021. But it all depends, because Georgia is in a better standpoint offensively than they were in 2021, especially when that game was played, because Stetson Bennett wasn't even the starter then. So Carson Beck is an experienced and really talented quarterback and one of the top guys for the draft. So you couple that, but I do think it's not out of the realm of possibility that Clemson can cover. But
yeah, I mean,
winning the game is going to be a much different story, and maybe it's a late score that gets you within 2 touchdowns. But
right, it very well could. It's a big line, 13.5. That's a lot of points. So I mean, there's definitely a world where Clemson keeps it closer than 13.5. That's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. But again, who knows? Would you put money on it right now? I don't know. That'd be up to you.
Yeah,
I'm not a gambling man, so.
But hey, I mean,
if you are, if you truly do believe in Clemson against Georgia, there's a lot of money to be made in this game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I might lay down a Clemson money line ticket. They'll throw down a little. I mean, it can't
throw down a little bit of money that you're willing to lose, and if they shock the world and win, because that would shock the world if Clemson goes out week 1 and beats Georgia. The college football world would be floored. You could win some money there. So if you feel strongly about it, go ahead.
And Chase says, "Who else is excited for Monday?" Yeah, I'm certain. I never said that sentence before in my life, but
we finally got a reason to look forward to a Monday.
Yeah.
Said no one ever.
Yeah. But I do think he's in reference to landing Cortez Mills and Watts who make their and Hardy Watts who make their decisions on Monday. He asked, "Do you think we land both of them?" Both of them, I'm gonna say no, but I do think I think it's more likely you land neither than both. I'll say that, but I don't think you're completely out of it for either one of them either.
Hopefully, we can get the split decision and at least get some good news and some bad news at the same.
I think you should be okay if you get one of the two.
Yeah.
And if you get both, that's perfect. But if you land one, it'd be ideal to at least land one.
Yeah. Probably more likely to land Mills than Watts, but
yeah,
who knows?
For sure.
Watch, just because I said that, it's going to be the opposite.
Yeah. Could you? Yeah. I mean,
I'll be okay with that though.
Knowing, recruiting is a funny game, and especially nowadays, it's
Who knows, man? Anything could happen.
Jay says it's August 31st. Clemson is down 20 to 14th in the fourth. Which side of the offensive line are you running? Are we on the goal line or
goal line?
It really doesn't. Honestly, it doesn't matter to answer this question. I think it's the right side very easily. Right now,
is it
for
fourth down?
Yeah, who knows? But I have a lot more confidence in the right side of the line. I mean, especially in the run game. Especially in the run game. We're talking run game. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Walker Parks and Blake Miller are two bodies that move people. And if you from a center standpoint, you have a lot of help. Like whether it's Harris Sewell or Ryan Linthicum, you just kind of have to not get completely destroyed. And I think you have a good chance to have a successful run play. Now I do. Now, obviously, I think that's just in a vacuum because you are facing. We're talking August 31st, so that's you're playing Georgia. So, it depends on who's lined up on their side of the ball as well, from a defensive standpoint. But
right,
I think just in a vacuum, I'd have to go the right side. Blake Miller and Walker Parks are the most physical run blockers on the team. So they're going to move. They're going to move bodies. So pass protection. Okay, we might have to have a different conversation, but run game certainly is very much. It's very obviously the right side.
Yeah, I would agree. No question about it.
Intelligent Savage 629 says, "Who's the running back coming in as a change of pace after Phil Maffa?" I mean, there's a couple of guys in line there. We've talked about him. Jay Haynes, I think, is the obvious one from a change of pace standpoint, as far as giving you a different style. But of course, you also have Keith Adams, Keith Adams Jr., and they're going to want to give him the ball, to spell Maffa at times, because he does give a similar physical, downhill kind of one cut style. But I do think if you're trying to, give the defense a different look, I think it's Jay Haynes, obviously right now. Hustler Inc. says Cade has to be Trevor Lawrence and the offensive line has to be Michigan's in order to beat Georgia. I wouldn't go that far. But they certainly have to be very, very good. Like, you can't have, you certainly can't have the Wake Forest version of Cade.
Dang, bro, we got to be perfect to beat Georgia.
Yeah, we got
to get Trevor Lawrence back, and then we got to get Michigan's O-line.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, I don't think this Georgia team is unbeatable. That's not. I mean, they had their flaws last season. I do think some of them will be corrected, but I don't think they're all gone. They still have some question marks from a secondary standpoint. I think they're still vulnerable there. Not that they're untalented, but a lot of young guys and that haven't necessarily played all that well. And so I don't think they're super scary on the interior. Like, they've got really good players on the interior, but they don't have Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt, and like that's not the defensive line. I'm sorry, the interior defensive line that Clemson's going to be facing. And outside, Michael Williams is an absolute freak. Like, that's no question. And I think their linebackers will be pretty good. Like, it's a really good. It's going to be a top 10 defense. So, like, I'm saying this all relative, but I don't think they are I don't think they're an unbeatable, like, no weaknesses. Like, where you need to have a Trevor Lawrence and a Trevor Lawrence and a Michigan's offensive line to beat Georgia, because that wasn't the case last season. I mean, Alabama did. Jalen Milroe was far from Trevor Lawrence, and Alabama's offensive line last year was far from Michigan's. But
there's obviously got to be a lot of improvement for Clemson to compete, specifically on the offensive side of the ball with this Georgia defense. But I don't know if we have to have Trevor Lawrence back there.
Yeah, it's not that dire.
But we definitely need vast improvement.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it shakes out.
And I think if the offense has the potential, so it's like if they live up to that potential, then they can certainly move the ball and threaten Georgia offensively. But it's a matter of especially being explosive and making Georgia respect a downfield passing game.
That's the key.
Like I said, I think you have the pieces to do that, but do you have the quarterback play? Or is Cade going to be able to see that, see those throws when they're there and hit them and be on time?
Is the offensive line going to hold up?
Right.
There's a lot of factors that are going to go into it.
But that I think that and that's one of the biggest things that defenses have been able to do with Clemson, where they were able to do with Clemson last year. And it started from very week one. I mean, Duke played quarters like that, basically that entire game, and just was like, okay, we don't think you can. It's like we're going to keep everything in front of us because we don't think you're going to be able to sustain drive after drive after drive.
And unfortunately,
we're not going to give you the opportunity to hit big plays.
Yeah,
and so
unfortunately, they were right because we turned the ball over time after time and shot ourselves.
And that was the blueprint for every single, basically every defense they played. From there on out, that's
It was the whole blueprint last year was make Clemson go on methodical drives and wait for the mistake to happen.
Yep.
And as we know, it happened all year because we didn't go a single game without a turnover.
Really, what's funny is really the only team that didn't do that to start was Florida State. That was one of the weirdest things because like Florida State was they blitzed a ton in that game, a lot more than a lot of other teams did. Like it was like they wanted Clemson to make force Clemson to force the mistakes instead of letting Clemson spit up all over themselves. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was kind of, obviously they won the game, so it worked out. But I thought their game plan was a little bit different, and they kind of switched and gave them different looks in that second half. But I did not expect them to be as aggressive as they were, because Clemson was able to hit some plays. Tyler Brown had multiple big catches down the field, and Clemson was very, very efficient, especially in that first half, and they were finishing drives was really the biggest thing. But the most of the year it was just kind of we don't really we're not even going to let you try to hit big plays, and we're gonna we're gonna let you spit up all over yourselves and make the mistakes. So that's the thing that has to change for Clemson this year is you got to at least make a team respect your downfield passing game, because once that happens, that's when everything else opens up, because they have to be mindful of that at all times. And teams didn't have to do that. So we don't think you're good enough from a quarterback standpoint. We don't think your receivers are going to get open, and we don't think your offensive line is going to hold up for your receivers to get open. So we're just going to. That's what they did. Wake Forest was getting pressure with three guys at times. Like that was
so frustrating.
So frustrating, man. That tape was disgusting. That was like the worst. That was the worst. That was worse than Duke. Like from just my eyes, like especially going back and watching it and just seeing like that was probably the worst game the offensive line played all year. They had no business. There was no reason why they allowed as much pressure as they did, because Wake Forest was not. They were not doing anything special. As far as looks, like they just were sitting back in quarters, and they were just winning up front. It was pretty bad.
Tough game.
Let's do a couple more. We're hitting the 2.5. Oh, we have a super chat. Glad I saw that.
Yeah.
That would have been
Chase Thompson.
Chase, thank you so much for the $5. He asked, do you think we land the Ole Miss transfer after the – you're probably referring to Dylan Alfred. Sorry. I was like – yeah, Dylan Alfred.
I think he's talking about Dylan Alfred.
Yeah. who recently decommitted from Ole Miss. I was like, Ole Miss transfer. I was like, Clemson taking a transfer. Are we talking basketball or
Breaking news?
baseball?
Breaking news.
I mean, baseball's had some good
Yeah.
news on the transfer portal.
Yeah,
I was
for
like,
sure. Yeah,
maybe he's talking about that. No, I'm just messing with you, Chase. But I do like where Clemson stands with Dylan Alfred. I think he's on the track to end up in the class. I think Clemson is very serious when it comes to guys that are committed to other programs that show interest. It's like, okay, well, we need you to fully commit and show that you're interested in us, so we're not wasting our time. And we host you on a visit, or we bring you on campus, and you're just here to mess around and get a free visit or whatever, or just say you got an offer. So it's like we're not gonna offer you until you make that step, and we'll take that step too, and then things progress from there. So that's usually how things work. I think the only person I can really think of that was still that flipped, like legitimately, like was committed to a program, and then they were committed to Clemson, was Nate Wiggins. But that was because I believe that was the year they had the coaching change when Coach O was fired. So it was kind of a little bit of a different circumstance. He flipped to Clemson on signing day. So that's one of the rare things where a guy didn't publicly decommit first before committing to Clemson. But normally, if a guy is committed, like Clemson won't offer until they decommit.
Yeah, they're not going to officially offer until you decommit. Shout out Chase Thompson. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Thank you for supporting the channel. I think out of the three that we talked about earlier in the show, and Cortez Mills, Samari Reed, and Dylan Alfred, I think he's the one that you feel probably most comfortable with that's going to end up at Clemson when it's all said and done. When he commits, I don't know, but he's already got a crystal ball out there to Clemson. Obviously, there's a relationship there. He was there in spring. He came and worked out at camp back in early June. Subsequently decommitted from Ole Miss. Less than an hour later, announced an official offer from Clemson. So, I mean, read the writing on the wall there. It seems like things are trending in a positive direction for the Tigers there.
Yeah. So. He did recently pick up an offer from Miami, but I really do think that Clemson they've advanced that relationship pretty well. And it's not like these things are happening behind. So even before he's he was before he decommitted from Ole Miss, Clemson had been in conversations with him, and they do have conversations with other recruits, and they have relationships, and so it was kind of like Dylan has been on their radar for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And they felt like now was the time, and Dylan himself felt like now was the time, and so their things were kind of worked out that way. So
he's gonna be on campus for the all-in cookout.
Cookout, yes, he will be. And hopefully
he'll be in town that Thursday with his family, rolling into the weekend of the all-in cookout. So maybe get a commitment then. I don't know. Or maybe before. Who knows?
Who knows? But that would. And speaking of the all-in cookout, that would be. It makes the timing of Cortez Mills and Hardy Watts making their decisions a little interesting too. So we'll see what happens there. Last one. I want to hit this start one. Jay asks, if Lucas goes through fall camp fully healthy, do you start him over Lewis? I think so, but I don't think it would be. I think so. Yeah, I think if Jaden Lucas goes through camp fully healthy, I think he'll be the starter. But it'll be kind of it could be a or type of situation,
right?
Because I do think Shelton is going to play. He showed last season that he's on the fast track to being a full-time starter. So I think I think Sheldon Lewis is going to be a factor regardless. But I think if Jaden Lucas, has that, has a healthy fall camp and he shows everything he needs to show, I think he'll be that starter opposite of Avion Terrell.
Yeah, I think so.
So
and that's really what you hope for. I think he's a little bit better corner right now than Sheldon Lewis. But again, Sheldon Lewis is on his way, man. He's a young guy. He's going to continue to grow. He's right there too. So it's good to have a guy like that because you can't bank on Lucas being there because he just hasn't.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
he's there for a game or two and then he's not there. So we'll see. See if he can stay healthy. Hopefully he does.
Hopefully.
That was my wild card. If you guys missed that segment, so
mine too.
That was our wild card for the cornerback position.
I think that'll do it. I'm gonna let you close us out.
All right, guys. We still got 29 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for being here on this special episode tonight. This was the 75th edition of the All In Show. I can't believe we've been doing it that long, but 75 shows in. That's absolutely crazy, Jordan. We've made it 75. Here's the 75 more of the All In Show, the 100th live episode on the Clemson channel. And we hit 5,000 subscribers this week. So thank you guys for showing up and making this night special. Shout out to Zachariah here with a $2 super chat. Says, great show. Thank you for the support, man. Thank you for showing up and always supporting the show. Really do appreciate that. Thank you to all of you guys that have been in here, liking the video, commenting in the comment section, hanging out with us for what is 2.5 hours now. Don't forget, right after the show, me and Jordan will post the timestamps for each individual segment that we did tonight. So if you guys want to go back and watch a particular segment, we'll post that in the description of this video. If you're watching this in the rewatch, thank you so much for watching it. We got another super chat. Chase Thompson comes through with a $5 super chat. He says, first timer. Thank you so much, man. Hopefully you guys will continue to come hanging out with us. Hopefully you like the show. You like what you saw here. Consider subscribing to our channel. Again, me and Jordan do this show right here every Friday, 5:30. So come hang out with us again. We enjoyed your conversation and your comments as well. And thank you for supporting the channel. But with all of that said, guys, we're going to go ahead and get out of here for tonight. We will see you guys next week right here, same time, same channel, same everything, 5:30 next Friday. Until then, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. Go Tigers.
Later, y'all.